Hello and welcome to the Doof Game Club, Doof Media's exploration of the joy of play. I'm Ruben Morehouse,
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
and before we start, a quick special announcement in case you have been under a rock for the past month. The Doof Discord is still public and fully accessible to anyone, not just our patrons anymore. So if you want to join and leave us your thoughts on Game Club games as they're happening and stuff like that, the Game Club, the Doof Discord is the best place to do it. So head to doofmedia.com/discord and you can do that.
Yeah, it's such a great way to get involved in the club, especially with this month. I think a lot of people are going to get kicks out of streaming and
Yeah.
watching other people play Disco Elysium. So it's absolutely the
Yeah.
way to engage.
And in case you need any more motivation, a reminder that each year we do our annual clubbies. And one of the clubbies awards is for best community member. So if you want to be eligible, you got to be in the Discord. That's the
True,
rules.
true. But yeah, should we get into this month's game?
Yeah, what do we play this month, Elliot?
So this month we all played Blue Fire, which was
By
the
Ruby
winner
Studios.
of my five nominees.
Hmm.
Yeah. So uh, made by Roby Studios, which I believe is a relatively new set of developers. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean,
Let's
let's
start.
just
Let's
jump
talk
into
about it.
our overall impressions.
Yeah. I'll just say quickly, I think all of this gameplay that we're going to be seeing in today's stream is going to be mine. So
Yeah.
this will be fun. You all can judge all my platforming skills or lack thereof. But let's just start with a general kind of, uh, general thoughts about the game, I guess, Elliot. What were your general
Yeah.
thoughts about the game?
I love this game. Yeah, I mean, I understand some people had some difficulties with crashes or glitches or whatever, and there are some rough edges for sure, but like I think it's built around a core of really fun platforming, and that's absolutely my jam. So I absolutely loved every second of it. Yeah,
Yeah, this is interesting to me because obviously other games that we've played on the Game Club include Dark Souls and Hollow Knight, both of which this game clearly takes some inspiration from,
yeah,
mechanically from Dark Souls and more kind of aesthetically or atmospherically from Hollow Knight, I would say, although, a bit of both in both categories. I think it's going to be interesting for us to explore over the course of this Game Club what made it so that you liked this game so much and maybe didn't have as strong reactions with those games.
I think I really enjoyed Hollow Knight as well, but definitely I preferred this to Dark Souls. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's very interesting because, like, we talk about the rough edges, and I think that's going to set a thing in this conversation that I'm probably going to come back to a few times. I should start by saying I also quite enjoyed this game. I mean, like, just kind of a competent 3D kind of platforming action RPG is totally my jam.
yeah,
But I think something that's worth saying about this game is you touched on it having rough edges, and I think that's very fair. I think to me, it definitely felt like there was stuff in this game where they had a big list of things they wanted to include, and due to budget or time or whatever the constraint was, they had to cut or leave some of these things unfinished. And I think that's going to be something that we're going to touch on a few times as we go through more specifically. And I'll kind of pull out some of these things that I noticed that really just drove me a little bit insane
yeah,
with this game. Because, yeah, it kind of does feel like there are parts where the game needed more testing. There are parts where things felt kind of unfinished to me. But we'll
yeah.
get to that as we go, I guess.
And I've played a lot of other sort of indie games that have felt like that to me.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it is a very indie game kind of thing, right?
yeah,
Especially for a company's first game when they don't necessarily have connections with all the publishers or whatever, or trust to develop a big game.
yeah,
The thing I will definitely say about this game is the bones are there enough to the extent that once a studio makes another game, I'll be very interested to see, okay, now they've had
yeah.
a success, what does it look like?
No, I agree. I'm absolutely looking forward to whatever they do next.
Yeah.
Um,
It's also worth noting they are making DLC for this game, is that right?
I found an AMA where they said they were. I think they were thinking about it. They didn't. They seemed hesitant to confirm anything, which is fair.
Yeah.
But they were talking a lot about areas they'd cut and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, I guess it's worth kind of noting the game's been moderately successful. So we'll see. Maybe they'll do some DLC and touch up some of these grabs that I'll pull out.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm really glad that this ended up winning the game club vote. I do wish maybe we should have put it up in 6 months when maybe it would be a bit more. Some
Mm,
of those like low hanging bugs might be a bit more ironed out. But
yeah.
yeah, like I'm still really glad I played this.
Yeah, definitely.
Also,
Yeah.
sorry, just before we leave these overall impressions, you played this with the keyboard and mouse.
Hmm.
I just I
The game's on PC, Elliot. What are you trying to say?
I just find that so interesting that you thought a keyboard and mouse would work for a 3D platformer.
Well, I played it on PC. If I'd played it on a console, I would have used a controller. But I played it on PC, so I would use a keyboard and mouse because that's what is on PC.
How did you play Outer Wilds?
With a keyboard and mouse.
You're insane.
If the game's on PC and I play it on PC, I'm going to use my PC. What I don't know what you're trying to say
I
here,
don't.
Elliot.
It's not a weird thing to play with controller on PC. You're making out
I
like that's
think it
not what people
is.
do.
No, what am I going to go and plug a controller into my go
No,
and
they're
plug this
wireless now.
PS4 controller that's usually plugged into my computer? No,
You don't
just
need
use
to
my
plug it
keyboard and
in. They've
mouse.
been wireless since 2013.
Oh, yeah. I just when I do play stuff on my PC with a controller, I just plug it in, but that's very rare. I actually
Like, okay, because
the only
I
time
know I drift a lot towards keyboard against keyboard and mouse more than the average person, but I feel like it's pretty universally acknowledged that you play 3D platformers with a controller.
genuinely the only time I play something with a controller is when I'm doing my job of being a game dev and testing controller controls. Like if I'm playing something on my PC, I will play keyboard and mouse 100% of the time.
You're insane.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway,
yeah,
should we talk about the actual
yeah.
game?
Let's get into it. Um,
Uh, so yeah, I mean, this game has a number of different kind of components, I would say,
yeah,
right? Component pieces. So we're going to kind of talk about things in a bit of a piecemeal way. There might be some jumping around, but we'll see how we go. I think the place to start though is definitely the platforming in this game, which is probably the main mechanic of it.
definitely the highlight for me. Like it felt like the core.
Yeah, the
One
footage
I
we're
will
seeing
say.
right now is me climbing. I don't know what it's called, the graveyard tower, the winter tower, I call it.
Yeah,
Um, which to me was the highlight of the platforming. It's just kind of this long thing where you climb up a big tower that, at any point you'll fall down and have to redo a little section. Plus, there's some fun combat that's kind of over the void, which is always a bit of a fun kind of
yeah.
thrilling thing. Difficult to be like, I'm platforming around, doing some combat, dashing around. This was the highlight of the platforming to me.
I yeah, I'm not seeing as much wall running as I would expect for the highlight personally, but like because the wall running was what always made me feel like I had fantastic flow.
Mm,
Just because of the way you had to perfect the timing because you'd run down a little bit and you had the timer on your like uh
your stamina.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like overall, I thought the platform in this game was fantastic. I if you haven't watched like Game Maker's Toolkit's video on versatile verbs, and you're listening to this, you should definitely watch that afterwards. But
We'll
basically,
probably
versatile verbs is something Mark Brown invented, or it's a term he coined for like actions that you can do in games that have a lot of different
kind of
levels.
contextual uses or like, yeah.
Yeah, like so the simple example would be a jump that rather than just having a set height, depending on how long you hold the button, it might jump higher or lower. Like that's a really simple example, and that's what I really enjoyed about all of the platforming in this game was like even the second jump had versatility.
Mm,
Like the dash had versatility, which is something I criticized Celeste for not having.
mm,
Even though I understand how that fit into the level design vision for that game, it was really nice coming to this one and seeing that I could control exactly how far I dashed.
mm.
I just really enjoyed all of the movement because it was so responsive and versatile.
Yeah, I think um, this probably was less my experience at the very start of the game when all you have is the jump and it feels
Yeah,
really, you
it,
feel
it
really
ramps
bogged
up.
down by that. But as soon as you get the dash, that starts to help. And then about 4 or 5 hours in, maybe you get the double jump, and that really starts to make you feel like you're going there. I know you were keen on the wall run.
Yeah,
That never really felt super good to me. I think because of the same reasons the ledge grabbing doesn't feel good to me, which is that there were so many times where I would like intentionally jump towards a wall to try and wall run, off of it or wall jump off of it, and it just kind of wouldn't click on. You know what I mean?
Interesting. I didn't get that. I definitely got that with the ledge grabbing. I had
Mm,
issues with ledge grabbing. Um,
yeah,
I didn't have that with wall running. It felt very consistent to me. As long as I grabbed on to a wall like at the right angle, like if it was like a weird curvy wall,
yeah.
then sure it didn't work.
Yeah,
But
maybe something else that hampered that for me is that sometimes I never felt like I could tell for sure which walls I could run on and which ones I couldn't. There are definitely like some like rocks and stuff where you can't
yeah,
run on it or wall jump on it. And you can usually tell, but sometimes there are some that blur the lines. I don't know. I mean, it's like it's not a major problem, but it's a problem that happened, I would say, maybe like 8 to 10 times in my 5 hours of playing the game or 6 hours of playing the game, and that is enough for me to be like, for it to stick in your mind. You know what I
yeah,
mean? As
fair
like
enough.
a, yeah. Anyway,
Um,
most of the movement I felt really, really good about, and like controlling the camera and stuff felt really natural to me. All this stuff seemed to work really well for me.
yeah, yeah. Like I was constantly enjoying the movement in this game.
Yeah,
I'd love to have seen though, like one thing was that dashing along the ground didn't actually seem to be faster to me because there's like a pause after you do it. I'd
yeah,
love for there to been like dash chaining so that
mm,
even when I'm just walking around or doing some backtracking, I can feel like I'm in a flow state.
yeah. Especially because there is a fair amount of backtracking in this game, and you don't unlock fast travel until 6 or 7 hours in.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to speed up some of these traversal mechanics a bit,
Yeah.
don't you?
Well, yeah, just like making the parts where I'm just moving normally feel like I have something to do would be, yeah,
Mm,
like great.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, I obviously I think as well while we're talking about platforming, there are in other videos, but I think we should talk about the voids, which are like these
Yes.
little. So you saw that buzzsaw void in the previous video. They're basically these little levels that you access from the overworld, and you go into them, and it's just like a pure platforming level. It's very similar to
Yeah.
like the Mario 3D games do this a lot, where they'll have inside the main levels like little linear challenges.
Yeah.
Um, these were some of the lowest and highest points of the game for me. Like there were some voids
They
where I
had
was
some
like,
real
I hate this.
variability, didn't they? Yeah.
And then there were other ones that were like, this is the purest form of what this game should be because you'd be wall
Yeah.
running, double jumping, dashing around. Like it felt
Yeah.
like you were fucking awesome as you worked through it.
Some of them felt really, really good, and some of them felt really, really bad.
Yeah. Um, I wish they'd had checkpoints. It would be my biggest request.
Definitely would have helped with some of the ones. I mean, the ones that. So this is the thing, right? The ones where where they felt good, you didn't really need checkpoints for them because you were having fun with the experience. The ones that felt bad, I was aching for checkpoints because I would have to hit some very like janky bit over and over again. And then if I failed it, play through the same 60 seconds again just to get to the like 2 seconds of janky content that I needed to
Yeah,
progress
that was
past.
the problem. Is I'd say you either halve the length or add like a checkpoint halfway through because the problem was obviously, and we talked about this in other games as well. If the hard jump is 60 seconds in, I just get tired of doing that first 45 seconds over and over and over.
Yeah,
Um,
the parts where I felt most frustrated at this game were in the voids when I was up against a challenge that it just didn't feel fair to me. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think I know what you mean.
We'll see some of these uh,
But
actually as we
they were
go.
so good when they worked though. Like that
Yeah,
buzzsaw one, I had an absolute blast in.
yeah,
Um, also as well, there was like this thing where they had 30 little orb things in them, and you could sort of collect them all. Although apparently Ruben told me you don't need to collect them all to finish.
yeah. I found this out as well when I realized I had missed one. There are orbs in these voids to collect, but you actually don't need to collect them to get the heart container, which is the reward each time you finish a
Huh.
uh,
That's so
a
odd.
thing.
Because I was just
They're
thinking the
completely
whole
optional, seemingly. I haven't seen anything that requires you to get them, and there's no like marker on them on the uh, on the void interface or anything when you go into it to show like
you
you've
didn't get
collected
them
all
all.
of them or anything like that. So it seems completely irrelevant. Or they're kind of guides in the way that coins in a Mario level
Yeah.
sometimes guide you with what you're meant to do.
I just thought it was really cool because when I did think they were a collection mechanic, like you needed all of them. I would have loved to see less linear voids, like ones that, especially if they had like checkpoints,
Yeah,
ones that you sort of had branching paths or looped back on themselves and stuff, and you were trying to like operate under a timer to collect all the orbs or something.
Mm,
Um, like yeah, that's what I'd love to see in the future is like voids that experiment with more formulas rather than like a linear series of challenges.
mm, yeah, yeah. Um, I want to take this opportunity to. We talked about some of these things that felt a bit janky to me, and I thought I would include some clips of these because some of these just felt like very solvable fixes, right? So here's a void that drove me a bit insane. Um, on this void, you've got moving platforms that you have to follow along, and you might not be able to see it there, but every time you encounter a moving platform, it actually shows you the track of the platform, right? You can
Yeah,
actually see a white line. But of course, in this void, the one that where the moving platforms are actually the most important, it's all white void, and so the track of the moving platforms are impossible to see 80% or 90% of the time.
yeah,
And so this,
you can just sort of see it, like you can see it there now, but
yeah,
yeah, they're kind of impossible to see for some of it. Yeah,
and this to me is a great example of the thing wrong with Blue Fire, where it felt like this is just a very small problem that actually made this void just feel ridiculous because sometimes these platforms would just take random turns that you can't tell, and
yeah.
I'm kind of like, I wish I wish the game had a bit more time to polish out some of these things that feel very solvable, but just clearly they didn't have enough time to kind of catch and fix.
Yeah, I that would sort of be the thing with Blue Fire for me is it's sort of like all of the things I want them to change or fix are actually quite small. Like it's the bones that the game is built on are so strong. It's little things like the UX in a lot of places did start to grind me down. Like often I'd go to buy like mana from the fire shrines, and you had to buy it
Yeah,
like one thing at a time, and I could afford like 10. So it
yeah.
was just like going through over and over and over. It was like it'd be great if it, so what's a little streamlined things for the UX, but like it's weird to get so bogged down in these because they feel so small, but they do impact your experience at times in pretty massive ways.
Yeah, I'm going to point out another one which feels less small to me. This one was kind of like, I mean, this was annoying, obviously, and you see it got me killed a few times. But like this next one that I'm going to show off, this is one where, again, I was in another void and I got to make, you've got to make this jump. This is how you progress it. And it's just a jump that I have all the tools I need. I have the jump, I have the double jump, I have the dash, but it's just an impossible jump at this point for me, right? And I later figured out what I needed to do, which is there's this
The,
other mechanic in the
the
game.
spin attack.
Uh, I didn't have the spin attack at that point. That's right. That's another thing that I could have done. But uh, at this point, when I had first encountered this, I should have been able to complete it basically, and I could. What I needed to do was equip a pin. So there's this other mechanic called pins in the game that are kind of like, um, they slightly augment you. They don't unlock any major functionality, but it's things like some life steal when you hit an enemy, or improves your movement speed. And that's the one that I needed to have on for this. And it's the kind of thing where I feel like, I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I feel like maybe the developers, when they're developing this game, constantly know, okay, I would always have this pin equipped because I think it's the best pin, and so they're balancing the game around something that isn't necessarily what they want it to be. And it just kind of felt like another thing where the game balance was just kind of slightly off. If the platform was maybe further away, that would have also helped. Maybe then it would have been, oh, I need to wait until I get the spin attack or some other movement option to solve this. But it was
Yeah.
just in that sweet spot where it just felt like the game was slightly broken, and there wasn't really anything I could do about it at this point.
So I think I had the spin attack when I got here,
Mm.
so I managed to make it across. But like, yeah, so I suppose I didn't run into any situations because it's something that drives me nuts in like Banjo Kazooie is one of my favorite games, but I hate it when games taunt you with shit you can't do yet.
Oh, this
Um,
happened. That happened a number of times in this game, Elliot. Come on,
I mean, there were like
like,
a few collectibles, but they were so obviously out of the way that it didn't
yeah,
feel like it was shoving them in my face.
yeah, true. If they're more obviously like a thing that you can't access, that's better.
Yeah.
But in this situation where it felt to me like
No,
I
this
just
is
what
yeah.
something was just going wrong to me, right?
Yeah, this is interesting. I didn't run into anything like this where I would get like halfway through something and then be like, "Oh, I can't finish this part of it because I
Yeah,
don't have all the pieces." Whereas like Banjo Kazooie will very often let you get like halfway through a path and then be like, "Oh no, come back here later."
yeah,
Um,
man, annoying.
yeah. So I didn't hit that in this, but it's clearly like this seems like a spot where it is possible. Because if you didn't have the spin attack here, well, it just looks impossible.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the thesis of my thoughts about this game, right? Is I actually think there's a really good game under here, but there were just so many moments that I hit in this game where I was like, this just feels broken to me.
It's interesting because that was exactly how I felt about Dark Souls. I remember like
Yeah.
that was Dark
Yeah.
Souls for me was like this is so close to being brilliant, but it just keeps shooting itself in the foot. Although I
Yeah.
think that one had very different problems to
Well,
this for
yeah,
sure.
it's almost like in Dark Souls, I feel like the shooting itself in the foot is intentional, whereas
Yeah,
in this, it just feels like it didn't feel like putting that platform at that point was an intentional choice, if or having the tracks in the Rainbow Ride Void that we just saw. Neither of those felt like intentional choices; they just felt like oversights.
yeah. Which I think I might be wrong, but I think Ruby Studios is 3 developers.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's the sort of thing where like it's just yeah.
No,
If
I
I,
mean totally understable that
yeah,
think you can't always complete a thing to 100%, and you're never going to catch every single thing that exists in a game
yeah.
like this. Like you're just not. But
Well, hopefully,
it,
if they're still working on it, like these are the sorts of things where if you come like in 6 months, we might be able to like sort of unabashedly recommend this game if like
yeah,
all these small changes get made.
yeah, definitely.
Um, but yeah, so we're about to move away from talking about sort of the platforming in general to talking about the combat, which is the other sort of core component of the game.
Mm,
Um, but before we fully go into what we think about the combat, I do just want to say that like this game for me strikes the perfect balance between emphasis on platforming and combat. Like Hollow Knight is probably the other one that has had the most feeling of like, oh, I have both.
mm.
Um, and
Platforming and combat in a
yeah,
game.
and for me, Hollow Knight focused too much on the combat, and a lot of the platforming was just there. Like it wasn't challenging platforming; it was
Yeah.
just sort of platforming, and the challenge came from the combat. Whereas this game is usually platforming, and then there's a little bit of combat to maybe spice it up with some things shooting lasers at you or whatever.
Yeah, I get the point you're making here. I think the key difference is the focus, right? On
Yeah.
Hollow Knight, they did focus on having, one of the things that I think is so strong about Hollow Knight is they do like a bunch of really different, unique boss battles, right? Hundreds of, I mean,
Oh
not
yeah.
100 of them, maybe something, I don't know. But and so the combat is so focused on in that game,
Yeah.
and the platform just as a result isn't as,
Yeah.
right?
This is a very my personal tastes point that I'm making, but it's very much like for me, this is the
Yeah,
one. But even like because when I play Mario games, love the platforming in those. But then when you get to a boss in a Mario game, it's often like, what's the point of
well,
this?
but that's kind of the vibe I had in this game, right? Where you've got combat in this game, but there's not really that much you can do in combat. Like we touched on the idea of versatile verbs, and the versatile verbs uh, in this one are about platforming, but in combat it's run up to something, and you'll see it here. I remember this exact temple because when you're fighting these monsters, you just have to run up to them, shield, get knocked back, then run up to them, shield, and then get knocked back or dash back.
Yeah.
And it just is like got very repetitive very, very quickly.
I mean, that was like half the enemies in Hollow Knight too, though, for me at least.
No, but in Hollow Knight, it feels like there's more that you can do in combat, right? Like you can kind of
Yeah, that's
bounce
true.
around on enemies. You can go down to the ground and hit them a few times. You can kind of like run back and run in, like or shoot blasts or above or down attacks. Like there's all kinds of stuff you can do in Hollow Knight, I guess. And there's some in this. There is some where you can like lock onto an enemy and dash towards it and kind of bounce on it for a bit and dash away. And that kind of stuff felt really good, but there just wasn't enough of it. It just felt the combat in this game got quite repetitive for me quite quickly.
Yeah,
Um,
I liked it. Like I didn't find that to be because I found it was so de-emphasized. And it was
yeah.
often a choice. I really liked that it often it was that balance of the enemies are just there to make the platforming a bit harder, and it's your choice of just trying to push past them or
Mm,
like try to defeat them to try and make it easier.
mm,
Like so that's slower but easier. Uh,
mm.
yeah, I don't know. I do definitely agree that the versatility of the verbs of the combat versus the platforming was way decreased. Like, the spin
Yeah.
attack improved things a bit, but Aside from
But
the
I
fire
never used the
spell.
spin attack in combat. I only ever used it as a platforming
Okay.
tool.
It's called the spin attack. Um, yeah, the only like versatile verb I can think of for the combat is the fire spell that you charge. Um,
Yeah.
and that's like a fairly basic one, but yeah, like I'd
Yeah,
love
I
to
wouldn't
see.
even. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't even know if I would call it that because it's so like it locks on. You just kind of press or click the button, and you or hold it for a bit and release it, and it does a little blast. Like it's a little bit versatile,
yeah,
sure, with charge and the whole duration, but it feels pretty static.
yeah. No, but like I think you're right. Like I think I'd love to see like a sequel or expansion to this really up the versatility of the combat. I just hope it wouldn't come at the expense of really much more emphasizing the combat because again, I
Mm.
really like the balance that this struck. For me, it was like
Yep.
particularly when it came to the bosses, it felt yeah like again in most platformers it kind of feels like I have such simple attacks that it's like run and jump. Like bosses are just tricky platforming things, and this it was like tricky platforming stuff, but there was enough combat beside it that it felt fair. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's true for me for the first part of the game. I think another problem that happened with this game is there's this point in the game at which the enemies just kind of become impossible to fight. And so I made the conscious decision to just stop attempting to fight enemies at some point. Um,
is that when you get to the temple and it's the
when you
temple
get to the
guards?
temple gardens, yeah. So I've got a thing in this next clip of, I had just unlocked this new area. The next area I was meant to progress to, which is the temple gardens. And well, I think roll the clip and
Yeah.
you'll see kind of what I mean.
I just do what I say before we sort of move on from combat at
Yeah,
its
yeah,
core.
sure.
I love the directed dashing, which is where if you've
Mm,
locked onto an enemy and you dash without holding a direction, you home in on them regardless of where they are. So this is particularly great for really high enemies because you can basically dash straight up and then start hitting them in the air, and it feels fantastic. Like
yeah, that was very, very
I
good.
always felt like an absolute ninja doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it felt really great.
you're
Um,
right. That probably to me was the best feeling part of the combat was some of these aerial enemies you could just dash up to and go boom, 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 and then kind of dash down or fall down and then go again.
Yeah,
Felt
and you usually still had your second jump to like later on to sort of help you aim where you landed. Yeah, it was great.
yeah, yeah.
I also think the speed of the combat was good. Like, just compared to something like Dark Souls, which felt really slow to me. I
Mm,
really liked the sense, like those enemies where again you were complaining, like you sort of would go up, hit them, back off, and all that. I felt like it was just fast enough that that kept me really engaged. Whereas I remember
yeah.
fighting similar enemies in Dark Souls, it was a slog mentally.
Yeah, it could have been worse. Like the balance of like the health to the amount of damage that you're doing and stuff felt pretty good. It didn't feel like I had to do it 10 or 12 times. It was more like 4, and
Yeah.
that's kind of just in the realm of acceptable.
Mm. Like yeah, it felt really good when I found that rhythm. So yeah, I
Yeah.
really like the momentum of the combat in this, and the shield felt fair. Like as much as
Mm.
it's not versatile, I don't think it needed to be. It was like, well, they had the parry for it, which all
Yeah.
again felt great. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree. The shield also I think was pretty good.
But yeah, and just I don't think we have any clips of the bosses, so I do just want to again say, even though some of them were maybe a bit simple, I really liked that they were overtly platforming bosses that just had enough
Mm.
combat that they felt better than like Spyro or Mario or something.
Mm.
I really enjoyed all four of the bosses that I managed to fight. I didn't quite finish the game, unfortunately.
Mm. Yeah. Cool. Cool, cool.
But yeah,
Um
let's talk about the scaling of the combat.
so yeah, let's watch this point where I had just gone to the new area that I was meant to
Oh, I
discover, the
died here
Temple
so many
Gardens.
times.
Yeah. And you find this enemy who just looks a bit like some of the other enemies you fought, but just kind of immediately kills you, and there's not really anything you can do. Um, there's a few enemies that are like this, where they just kind of get into this pattern of you actually can't dodge their attacks, seemingly, or you have to be very, very precise to dodge their attacks. And they do enough damage that if you get into a fight with them, you're just gonna die. And I've never really had an experience that felt so like to me it's similar to something in Dark Souls, but the types of things where in Dark Souls you get to a place and you think, oh, this is not where I'm meant to be right now. These enemies are way too hard for
Yeah.
me. I'll have to come back later. But no, that was the next area I was meant to go to. And I initially left and was exploring other places because it just felt so clear to me that that was not where I was meant to go.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I like the way that the combat scales up in this game is you have weapons, which can upgrade how much damage you do, obviously. And we've already touched on how you get hearts from the voids when you
Yeah.
finish them. But there's no like damage. Oh, sorry, defense stat, right? There's no ability to reduce the amount of damage that you're taking or reduce your kind of knockback, at least not that I saw, which means that it just kind of felt a bit off to me, some of the scaling as the game got harder, because enemies would do so much damage to you at once that it just started to feel very weird. And I made the decision to just start ignoring enemies after a while.
Did the don't some of the different tunics have defense stats, or have I made that up?
Not any of the ones that I saw. The tunics don't seem to change anything other than your color.
Which is still cool.
I
But
mean, yeah, that's great, but yeah, they're just not part of that system.
no, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely noticed the Temple Gardens did feel like this big step up because it's the game entering that sort of second phase that like is a
Yeah,
formula Zelda kind of defined, and a lot of others like Dark Souls and Hollow Knight have copied it, where you get released back into the map with this sort of new hub and more skills.
yeah, and more kind of overarching goals around the
Yeah.
area that you have to go and do. Yeah,
And so like it's a bit of a classic, and yet it definitely feels like the game is saying to you, this is the second half now. Here's Temple Gardens, and it's way harder. Um,
yeah. But
but
did you make that same choice? Did you just start ignoring enemies at that point?
I more so yes, I'd still fight some, especially to get the little black orbs things to buy
Mm,
more mana. But I started picking my battles a lot more carefully, which is actually a mechanic I like. Like I like not feeling obligated to take on every enemy. Whereas early
mm,
in the game, I kind of would.
yeah,
This is one of those things where like games need to be designed to stop me from my own bad habits.
yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
totally.
Um,
Yeah, I
I
don't know.
I think
Just
the
felt a bit off to me.
yeah, it was a big jump, but I don't think it threw me quite as much as you, from the sounds of it. Those guys definitely killed me. I got really salty because I lost my ore. So this has that mechanic from Dark Souls and Hollow Knight in it, Blue Fire, where when you die, you can go and recover your corpse with all its money, and
Yeah,
if you die on the way, you just lose all that money.
you lose it. Yeah.
So I'd had a full wallet for about an hour at this point. Died twice there, lost all my money, and then it's basically the very next room is the next like shrine, but you need to
Mm,
pay to open them, and I no longer had the 800 money that I needed, so I never unlocked that shrine in the temple because
yeah.
I never ended up having that money, and it was just so I was a bit salty when that happened because it was sort of like, oh, like I hate this mechanic in Dark Souls and Hollow Knight too, and you've brought it here and it's hurt me.
Mm.
But yeah,
I think the thing that made it really feel worse was the cap on your wallet at the start of this game is so low. And it takes ages for you to unlock the ability to get your first upgrade. And then as soon as you get your first upgrade, you can get like the second and third upgrade immediately, which is what I did. I got the first wallet upgrade, and then just the very first thing I did was go and buy the second and third wallet upgrades, which I had needed the first one to be able to afford to purchase. It was just, but similar to you, I was at max gold on that 2999 for
yeah.
about, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, just kind of waiting for me to get to the next one.
It's a very like all of these Zelda games have had that same problem with their economy, where you alternate between having way too many rupees that you've been full for ages, and then suddenly
Mm.
Tingle wants you to pay 7 million rupees for some maps, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, I've been not collecting any for hours because I've been full. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think it's just a consequence of the way a lot of this genre handles currency.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the weapon upgrades were also odd to me because you found them. Like I'm much more
Mm.
of a fan of that Hollow Knight style strategy of
Like upgrades,
yeah,
upgrading linearly.
just because it kind of means that you're scaling. Whereas like in this one, I missed a couple at one point, so I was way under leveled for a while. Then I suddenly got this massive improvement on one, and then I found all the other ones later when I was backtracking, and it was just kind of pointless
Yeah.
to
They
have
meant
found them.
nothing to you at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. so it's kind of like it just means what can happen is you fall up and down in starts, whereas something like Hollow Knight, it just kind of scales fairly and linearly.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. I guess it feels weird because in other places I've criticized this game for taking too much from Hollow Knight, but this is one of the things where I'm like, you should have done this like Hollow Knight.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the things that this game did really well was exploration always felt rewarding to me. There's enough
Yeah,
things to find in this game that there's a lot of exploration to do. There's, almost every single room has like a little bonus thing you can find.
which I like. I
And
hate it when you go somewhere and there's nothing in a spot. Dark
yeah,
Souls.
this game really didn't have that problem, and I think that was really good about it. But yeah, some of the, I guess, consequences of that were some of these things that we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to come on, map design, because I think this is
Thought I was
a
you
big
didn't
thing
have it
for a
yet.
game in this sort of genre.
That door's not
Mhm.
open.
Oh, we actually have audio for this video, so I'll shut up.
I don't know if there's something I can see that will allow me to open that. Let me open
Oh,
that.
it might be too quiet.
Yeah.
Let's see.
This is basically Ruben discovering a door that opens a shortcut. It's that sort of classic Metroidvania hit that you want to see. Which I actually would say overall, this game could have used more of. This world felt a bit more linear than a lot of other like Metroidvania types overall
Mm.
to me.
Anything here that I missed?
I think definitely for the start of it. I mean, the start of it is kind of like you're playing through this fairly linear set of areas, and then once you get to that, that second phase that we alluded to, it really you need to do a lot more kind of exploring and backtracking,
There's
which
somewhere
feels a
I
lot
couldn't be
more
before that I can be now.
good, I guess.
That's definitely true. I guess it's like the problem is that's the same point where you unlock fast travel, so that
Mm.
the cohesive web of the world never felt as strong to me because by the time I
Yeah.
needed to use it, I had fast travel to kind of not need it.
Yeah, true. That's an interesting point. Maybe there's something that should have been done to spread
Yeah.
that out a bit more.
Well, because you unlock like the it's not quite the temple gardens, but that big temple room, and it actually serves as a bit of a hub because it connects to the lava place, it connects to the sanctuary city, and it connects
Yeah.
to like the starting area almost. So it's
Yeah.
like it's just weird to me that as soon as you access that room and have all of these paths that connect the world together, you also get the ability to not have to worry about the fact that it is in the middle.
Yeah. Although there aren't, I mean, the frequency of warp points isn't that much, so you kind of do need to still have a bit of an understanding of how the world clicks together. But you're right, it is pretty reduced.
Yeah, well, I didn't have to worry about it overall because I could just be like, oh, well, the forest sanctuary is next to this and this. Like, they're all sort of adjacent to a warp point, kind of.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm.
yeah, like that's the thing for me. The concept of the save points in general, like it uses them as shrines the same way Dark Souls and Hollow Knight did with the benches, and
Mhm.
I just don't like it that much as a mechanic. And with this
Mm.
game, maybe even more so than them, it kind of felt like the map wasn't as designed around having them work like that.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting.
I don't know. I've been struggling to say why it felt like it fit in less well in this than it did in those two games, but it just kind of
Mm.
did, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I've seen it too many times now. Keeps popping up in Game Club.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying to like look through this and compare it with what I know your thoughts are around Dark Souls and Hollow Knight and see why this one worked better or worse for you in some cases when it is kind of taking a lot of that same DNA. I'm trying to
Yeah.
differentiate it.
Also,
Mm.
sorry, like I am bringing up my criticisms, but overall, I really loved the maps in this game. Like the voids
Yeah.
were great because it let them do the crazy hard platforming stuff separately, and it just kind of let them fill the overworld that we do have with like really interesting scenery that like required you to jump around. What's a good verticality, despite the fact that it was all
Yeah.
tunnels? Yeah,
I I think one of the things I really liked about this was like in that town that you get to, the first town, I can't
yeah.
remember what it's called, where the forest shrine is.
It's like
There's so
sanctuary
many
something.
like Yeah, there's so many like little secrets and bits to
Yeah,
find over the course of coming back to that town a number of times, each time with a small kind of movement upgrade, you suddenly think, oh wait, maybe I can just kind of go around that corner and I'll find a new thing. And you always do, and it feels really, really compelling when that happens.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that yeah, again, that was always my favorite part of Zelda games was like
Yeah,
exploring the towns, and you got that hit in this one for sure. Like
yeah,
after you come out of Uthas's temple with double
hmm,
jump, and you can
yeah,
access the pub, um,
yeah,
and it turns out that's actually the center of town, and it's like you need to work on your accessibility. Um, yeah,
yeah.
like that was
Oh,
great.
this is where I get the wallet upgrade that I've been looking
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the past 5 hours. Oh, okay.
Like there's so much in that pub, and I'm just thinking like, just in universe, I'm like, you
Yeah.
guys have got to make this
Who
place more
built? Why'd you
accessible.
build a pub up there? Yeah, what a crazy place to build it. Yeah.
um,
Um.
but yeah.
I
Oh, sorry, you go.
Well, I was just going to say, we've been talking about kind of linearity or exploration, and I think there are some hub worlds or hub areas that worked really well for that. But there are places like the voids where it really you mentioned you would have liked to have some more kind of backtracking or exploration in the voids. I really felt that too. Similarly with the dungeons that felt very, very linear to me.
Yeah. Not to just turn into the GMTK references show, but obviously, I've watched a lot of boss keys in that, and he's sort of categorized the different sorts of dungeons Zelda has, and these ones very much felt like those kinds of, yeah, they were quite linear dungeons that just relied on you kind of puzzling out where you needed to go out of a handful of rooms, and then once you had all the
Mm.
keys, you could sort of move forward. Um,
Well, it's yeah. I'll kind of touch on the forest shrine as I think a very good example of this,
yeah,
right? Because you get into the first area of the forest shrine, and there's like a water, and you can see underwater. There's some things you need to get to, but you can't swim. So cool. We're gonna have some kind of water level changing
mhm,
puzzles. Great. But as you progress through, instead of needing to kind of change the water level to access or kind of to like move platforms up and down in the water or allow you to access different areas or anything like that you might see in a Zelda game, instead it's just kind of like you get to a point and you hit a lever and then the water level lowers forever and it's never going back up, but you've
yeah,
unlocked some new areas. It's or there are a number of times where I would like get into a room and the room has two doors and there's a door on the left that needs a key and a door on the right. So I try the door on the left. Okay, I need a key. Go to the door on the right. I fight some enemies to get a key, and then I go back to the left. And,
yeah.
and there's nothing else to do. Like there's a very clear linear path there. Even though there are keys, there's only one way to progress through this point. And it felt like that was pretty much the default in a lot of these dungeons.
Yeah, sometimes they add just a bit more complexity than that. But yeah, not as much. Like what I love in Zelda, like my favorite dungeons are those ones where it's like the whole dungeon is one structural puzzle, and
Mm.
so things like yeah, being able to raise the water level again and move platforms around, like that's something I'd love to see more of in future content in this series. Is
Yeah.
get more structurally yeah, involved with the dungeons.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think kind of I guess that takes us into a wider point about just like the gating in this game in general, right? There's a lot of gates, both figuratively and literal gates that you need keys of some kind for. It feels like it's at odds with the exploration of this game, the sheer number of gates that there are.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like Hollow Knight or Dark Souls did, like where a Metroidvania, where it's like here's this whole open world, go nuts exploring it. This one very much sort of says it shows you that here's a path that you'll be able to take later, but for now you've got to go this way, which is a lot closer
Yeah,
to like what Zelda does.
yeah.
Yeah,
And the real problem for me was when it was here's a path that you'll be able to take later. Sometimes it didn't actually tell you when that path was accessible to you. Like there's a point that you get in the game where the same point you unlock fast travel, and the entire time I've been playing through the game, there's tooltips that come up when you change scenes, right? And
yeah,
one of the tooltips was once you have a sanctuary stone, you unlock fast travel or something like that. And I was like, okay, cool. I need to wait until I get this sanctuary stone, then I'm going to be able to do all this cool shit. And I eventually get the other thing that had been happening was you come up to things in the floor that say activate, and I'd found three of these. You walk up to them and you click it, and it says can't activate this yet. Okay, cool. I'll get back to that another time.
yeah,
And I got up to the point where I got the sanctuary stone. And then I was kind of like, okay, what am I meant to do next? And I kind of poked around for a while. It took me about maybe 20 minutes, half an hour to figure this out. The Sanctuary Stone also, in addition to allowing you to do fast travel, allows you to activate these other random things in the floor. And nobody had ever really told that to me. I finally found that out when I had a conversation with a random NPC next to one of these gates saying, now you can activate them with a Sanctuary Stone. But there was no, I knew all the pieces. I'd visited all the pieces. There was just nothing that put them together for me. And it was this really frustrating experience of, oh, you mean I've just been running around for 20 minutes not knowing what to do when I actually could have done this thing that I had been waiting to hear about for a long time. Another thing that just felt like it could have been optimized by, in the dialogue where I get the Sanctuary Stone saying, and now you can activate these things. Or when I tried to activate them before, it could have said, you need a Sanctuary Stone to activate this. Or any of these kind of small tweaks that really would have smoothed it out very quickly.
No, I know what you mean. Like, yeah, absolutely. I hit a few things like that where sometimes I'd just be fucking around. I'd be like, oh, that does this? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Overall though, yeah, I didn't mind a lot of the gating in this. I thought this game had a fairly good balance of showing me stuff that I'd come back to, but in a way that wasn't overwhelming. Some games I feel do it so much that it drives me nuts because it's like, there are like 100 things and I just lose track and then I'm going to forget them later. This game, it only felt like I was keeping track of 10 or so at a time, which is actually manageable.
Not even that many to me. Like when I played through Dark Souls, I was keeping a map of loose ends when I was playing that game, and I didn't feel like I needed to do that for this.
No, yeah, exactly. Which I like. I thought. Again,
yeah, I agree, 100%. If they're not going to give me an actual map, at least keep the number of loose ends low.
Yeah, although give us an actual map, please. Like, I hate that Dark Souls is making this a thing. Give us maps. I like maps. They're great.
They are good.
Yeah, I like just in general, I very much get the vibe that these developers are very like on the same page as me with a lot of these opinions on how much of things you should be doing, and it's why I can't wait to see where they go from here because it's like a little bit of polish on this game and it'll be great, and then I'd love to see them explore some of that less linear stuff or more advanced combat later, and it's going to be like really cool. I'm really excited to see where they go.
Yeah, me too. I think like some of the problems that I think we had with this game can be traced back to, it feels like they've taken stuff out of Dark Souls and Hollow Knight that they really liked, and maybe they had thoughts about why they liked it, but they haven't kind of connected the tissues together enough on it. And so I feel like now that they've made this game and gotten that kind of out of their system a bit, they could take some of the ideas that they really, really liked and refine what it is and refine how it connects to the world and make it really feel a lot more cohesive.
I agree. Like this is a very good first game for a small studio to put out.
Yeah.
And as you said, like most of our problems are fixes that will probably take 2 hours of dev time or less.
Yeah. Talking about inspirations, should we move on to Hollow Knight atmospheric inspirations?
Yes. Although one last thing on this topic, just because I couldn't think of anywhere else to put it, as we move in, the music for this game rules. I really enjoyed the music.
Fair enough. I mean, to me, it was just kind of there. But anyway, let's look at this character, right, who is very clearly inspired by Hollow Knight. And almost all of the NPCs, they have names like Orip and Pimpo and whatever. And that even feels like the names of NPCs from Hollow Knight. Like the little noises that they make when they're kind of like, it's very like Hollow Knight-y. Like, to me, the whole thing felt very, very clear in what it was, where its inspirations lay, which I think is fine, but I found it quite funny.
I definitely think atmospherically this game borrows a lot, specifically from Hollow Knight. There's bits of Zelda in there, like there's definitely Twilight Princess-esque moments in this game. But yeah, for me personally, the weakest parts of this game were actually the ones where it felt like it was leaning too much into Hollow Knight. So things like the story and the NPCs just didn't grab me, and
that's un-Australian of you to say, Elliot. How dare you? How dare you slander the great names of Team Cherry?
No, I guess I just felt like this game had enough of its own stuff, and when it felt like it was just using Hollow Knight as a crutch for inspiration, those were the parts where it felt like they could be doing more.
Yeah. Yeah, like thinking about the atmosphere and the narrative of this game, some of the things that I really liked the most about it were the bits that it had kind of got on its own, right?
Yeah.
Like there's this theme of what is sometimes referred to as the five gods and sometimes referred to as the sixth god, and you kind of learn about one of the gods being um like evil or the proto god or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was like, oh cool, that's a cool kind of twist on this kind of thing that I haven't really seen before. Like it's doing some of its own stuff, but when it's leaning very clearly on Hollow Knight or Dark Souls, it's hard for me to appreciate that and not just say, yeah, I like that in that game, so that's why I like this, you know?
Yeah. Well, and just I guess the story and the NPCs were the bits that jumped out to me the most, and they were the bits that were most sort of obviously taking from Hollow Knight. So I just noticed that it was like the more this game didn't lead on that, the more I was actually getting into it. So
Yeah.
yeah. Also, give me a map.
Yeah, you like maps, don't you,
I
Elliot?
don't know why I've got that written in the notes here again, but I did feel like it was worth repeating. Apparently, I stand by it.
One of the things that I found really funny about this game was that at some point in the game, you get like you essentially are told, oh, you have to go collect the Lord's souls and put them in the Lord's soul vessel or whatever it's called. And I was like, oh, okay, like this is just Dark Souls right now, which is fine, but it just kind of made me giggle to myself.
No, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think as well some of those things like the concept of needing to go back and steal your body or having the save points that work just like shrines and benches. For me, it kind of felt like this game did it because those other games did it, and there wasn't necessarily thought put into does our level design match needing those.
Mm.
Because again, I still haven't quite figured out why it feels wrong to me, but this map just didn't feel like it inspired having checkpoints like that as much as those two games.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
Um,
What else? What else do we got to talk about?
I as a follow on to my point about the music being really good, I really really like the countdown timer music in this game because
It's so specific
it
for
is
you to name this song that I'm trying to think and I just have no recollection of what it sounds like.
this is such a weird little thing to latch onto, I admit, but like in Zelda and Mario and so many other games of this nature, you have countdown timery things. Like, you hit a switch and you've got 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And usually what they do is just play like clapping music or something that like slowly picks up pace until the timer runs out.
Right.
This was like a full on song that replaced the background music that added in layers of instrumentation as it reached its peak. And you could tell what they were doing for longer timers. They just start the song earlier. It was like they had a 3 minute song, and for a 1 minute timer, they just start at 2 minutes in. And I really like that because it was so much more consistent between all the various timers. Like I'd hear this one instrument sort of kick in, I'd be like, oh shit, I got 30 seconds left. I don't know. I just really appreciated that as more than like, in Mario 64 when I hear the tune in like every single time. I'm just like, oh, this is so. It's just clapping that picks up tempo.
Yeah. Interesting. Let's touch on those timer sections. I also didn't notice this, but now that you've pointed it out, I think it is a really cool thing to do. But touching on the timer sections in general, again, just quickly, another thing that feels like just a small thing that they got slightly wrong that annoyed me a huge amount. Every time you restart the timed section, it plays like a 3 or 4 second cutscene, which I think happens in some Zelda games as well, and it's so annoying there. Like,
No,
we
it's
don't need the
definitely
cutscene to show me that door opening. I know the door is opening, please.
like the first time, show it for sure.
Yeah,
But
100%.
yeah, no, you're right. Zelda does the same thing. It drives me nuts in that game as well. I I do really appreciate that hitting the switch resets the timer though, because some Zelda
Yes,
games
very good.
don't have that, and that drives me nuts. Oh, you can land on that boulder? Sorry. Uh, but yeah, like I agree. I often with those timed sections as well, it kind of feels arbitrary to me where the decision to chuck one in is. Like there's that one room in the second temple where you've got to climb up a bunch of platforms coming out of the wall, And it's like, I don't really like, the thing is, if you miss a platform, you essentially end up at the bottom anyway. So I don't understand why it matters that I make it there on the first attempt
Mm.
when I'm kind of getting reset to the start every time anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas like some of them, it was like, it actually mattered if I made the sequence quickly because there were slower ways to go about doing it.
Yeah, or it made sure that you were, yeah, I guess kind of not resting on your laurels for too long between
Yeah.
jumps and stuff.
It's just like it would make more sense to me in situations like those non-linear voids we were talking about, like proposing, like something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, for sure.
would be fantastic for timers.
Yeah, but yeah, I kind of want to put one more thought onto that, which is I think there's another theme that is running through some of these things, like the the combat suddenly getting arbitrarily hard, or some of these weird kind of slow down moments in the game, which is I feel like some of this game feels, or like that moment of before where we talked about how in the dungeons sometimes there's a key, but you just get the key by doing a short combat challenge, and so it's just you're very it feels very transactional to me, and that leads into this overarching feeling of like sometimes this game just feels a bit padded out to me. Like I played this game over this weekend as well called Rhythm Doctor. Love it, great game, 100% strong recommendation to everybody. But that's a game where you play the game with just one button, and every 5 to 10 minutes they're introducing crazy new cool things that make your jaw drop. And in that game, I was so wowed at how inventive it was, and I'm kind of comparing these two games in my head and thinking like, in this game, I feel like you get new movement abilities, but that happens every like hour to hour and a half. And there's fun sections, but again, they feel a bit spaced out. It just felt to me like this game, I don't know, and maybe it's another product of it feeling a little bit unfinished. Just feels like it has too many gaps in like things happening. You know what I mean? It just feels a bit too padded out for me.
I guess I'd be interested because when you raised that in the notes, I tried to think back to, uh, Zelda, Mario, Hollow Knight, and
Mm.
see if I felt that they were that different, and they didn't feel different to me. Like
Mm.
if I were to compare the pacing of like how much you need to do, or the ratio of how much you need to do versus how often you get new stuff that adds new things you can do, I would have said this was about on par with something like Ocarina of Time, or
Mm.
um, probably Hollow Knight too. So I guess it's interesting that the way the challenges were presented in this made that more obvious to you than in those games, potentially.
Yeah, I guess it just because some of the things felt so like I think the key that dungeon example, and it happened a few times of just needing to get a key. Oh, the key is just in this other room that's also right here. I'll go get it and then come back. Like that the moments like that happened enough that it just felt like why does that exist? This game you could have cut that out and it would have improved the
Right.
experience of the game to me, you
Well, I
know?
suppose so I'd almost classify it like as this is a symptom indirectly of the level design, because what
Mm.
happens in something like Zelda is this that's essentially how Zelda works. Like if you watch Mark Brown's videos, he diagrams out the temples, and that is basically how they work. It's just there's all these extra rooms and like passageways
Yeah,
that are dressing that, like, because you
kind
have
of
to
tricking the
utilize,
player out of thinking it's just that.
yeah, because
Exactly.
you're having to use your brain to route and stuff, so you don't quite
Yeah.
realize that that's fundamentally all that you're actually doing. So it's
Yeah.
like maybe what this game is missing a bit is those layers of dressing in the environment.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's fair. That because that really stood out to me. There's this one part where after you get out of the first area, you get to this little bridge right before you're going to get to the second area, which is the sewers.
yeah,
You go to this kind of ruined bridge, and that again had the same vibe of like, okay, I've got a door, I can see it, I can see the two levers, they're there and there, but to go to the levers, I have to go back here, jump up here, go across, hit the lever, back here, go
yeah.
here, jump across, hit the lever, and and then I can go through. And again, that felt very transactional to me. But if there was a bit more like I don't know, like atmospheric world design or kind of beautiful things to
Well,
look at or whatever it
the
is,
thing is
it would
that
have smoothed that over.
the stairs are both right there. If they were more crumbled and you had to backtrack and build this convoluted path to get to those
Yeah,
levers, then
yeah,
you feel like you've achieved something getting to them.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and this might be the thing that was making me feel like the shrines, the fire shrines that I've talked about, weren't as necessary. It was because a lot of the world was so directly accessible linearly,
Mm.
that it just kind of felt like all they were doing was pushing me backwards along a linear path, as opposed to in something like Dark Souls, it does sort of feel like, okay, well, I died there, but to get back there, I've got all these options for how I can go.
Yeah, yeah, or
Or I've got
or
other
kind of
places I can go,
like
like, fuck that corpse, they can keep that
yeah,
ore,
or
I'm gonna go
or
over
even
here.
oh, I died to this enemy. Okay, I know he's going to jump out from behind that corner, so I can kind of tweak my
Yeah, yeah.
strategy a bit. Whereas in this game, it wasn't. It never felt like there was a different approach you could take to a problem. It was just do it again, and this time do it better.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. And like,
Mm.
yeah, again, these are like the sorts of things that I feel like I would be, I feel like Roby would probably be on top of in their second game, and I'd love to see.
Yeah, and to complement the game, these are the kind of problems that we definitely wouldn't be able to congeal and elucidate if we didn't have
Yeah,
a good base game that worked quite well underneath it,
yeah, you're
right?
right. If the core of the game was like, if the platforming sucked, then
Yeah,
this wouldn't
this
matter.
wouldn't be the problem that we
Yeah,
had with the game. Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. I guess there's no such thing as a perfect game, right? You're always
No.
going to have to, except for Rhythm Doctor, great game, check it out.
No, well, yeah, again, so
Yeah.
many of these come down to like personal preference decisions as well. Like, there are probably people who will hear me say, "Oh, I like how this emphasizes platforming over combat compared to Hollow Knight," who are probably like, "How fucking dare you?"
Yeah.
Um, like, yeah, it's just a matter
Yeah,
of
I
how you
totally
feel.
disagreed with you on that, but
Yeah,
it's flavor. It's whatever. It's your taste.
exactly. Yeah,
Um, let's touch on. We've kind of talked around it for a bit. Let's talk about the narrative of this game, shall we?
yeah,
Um, because this game has a narrative. I mean, it feels a bit derivative of Dark Souls, I would say, and a little bit of Hollow Knight as well. Although for Hollow Knight, the main derivative bit to me is you kind of your character feels like the protagonist of Hollow Knight has just been kind of transposed and stuck into Dark Souls, which I thought was funny.
what was interesting for this one to me, because even though I didn't manage to finish the game myself, I actually like watched a video of somebody do the ending, like right after they finished the boss.
Oh, interesting.
It
Okay.
There was no explanation as to why it was significant that the hero is both part shadow and part fire, which was surprising to me. Maybe it's before the
I've
boss
been
battle.
expecting that to pay off because
Mm,
the game treats it like it's going to be significant.
yeah. So unless it's earlier and I just sort of missed it because I didn't want to spoil myself too much. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like again, I mean, obviously, everyone who follows this club regularly will know I don't emphasize story as much as the average person in a game. So like I did not find the story of this that engaging, but that also, I mean, I didn't like Dark Souls either, so it's not saying much.
Mm.
Um it reminded me a bit of Ocarina of Time when we got into the six gods and their history. Like it was like, this is the one of life, this is the one of water, and I was like, oh, I remember this from Ocarina of Time. Like that's cool. Um,
I
but
did
yeah,
like the fact that there was a sixth god that they don't talk about, the kind of Voldemort
yeah,
god. He created them, and then they had to like fight against him. I was like, okay, there's some cool stuff in here that I'd be
yeah.
interested to see. Um, but yeah, no, there wasn't enough to make me actually really care about the story. I don't think.
Again, though, I don't know that the game emphasized the story too much. Again, I feel like I'm on the same
Yeah,
wavelength
true.
as these developers, where they're like, we're putting enough story in to keep people like they're following a something like that you know what to do, because you can't have too little story. Like
Yeah,
the Mario games just tend to be like, I don't know, the princess is kidnapped or something. Go play the levels, you idiot.
yeah.
Um,
Don't
the,
worry about this bit.
yeah. Whereas like this game is sort of it's feeding you just enough story so that like yeah, like when the lords awaken and it's sort of like, well, the queen knows that you're growing powerful. Now the lords are awake. You're gonna have to go kill them before you can fight her. And it's
Mm.
sort of like, okay, this is enough story that I need to feel like I have motivations.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. I mean, there's nothing that wows you about the story, but it's definitely enough to get you to do what the game wants you to do, which
Yeah.
I guess means it passes the
Well,
test.
that's all it needs for me, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think our final one here is it's fashion time, blue fashion. Um, it, this is just a little point that I wanted to bring up because something the game really emphasizes early on is that you can change your costume, you can get these emotes.
Mm.
And the emotes really stood out to me because they're almost all like happy, cheery, celebrating thing.
Yeah,
And
they're
like,
like little Fortnite dances. I
yeah,
was really surprised by them as well.
or they come with like sound effects of like people cheering and stuff, and it doesn't fit in with the rest of the aesthetic of
It
the game at
doesn't, but
all.
I loved it
And
so
that's why I
much.
loved it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like watching this like cracked faced warrior of shadow and light do like yeah, a little windmill dance was just fucking
Yeah.
great. Like
Yeah.
again, this was something where they did not lean into Hollow Knight, and it was one of the like aesthetic highlights for me. Is
Yeah.
yeah, like and the emotes actually had in-game use as well. There would be
Well, some,
what
not a lot.
better than most games bother to put in.
Sure.
Which is like you could go to these. It was basically just a keying system. So there'd be
Yeah.
platforms that would require a specific emote. If you stand on the platform and do that emote, you get a chest somewhere else that you have to go and get.
Yeah.
Um, I almost found myself wondering, like, would it be cool? Because the story of this game, right, is you're this being that was created and left to develop over hundreds of years or whatever, and now you've like emerged from this test tube that you were built in. It'd be cool
Mm.
if you didn't speak English, like, or didn't speak any language, and you had to communicate via the emotes. Because
Just
like
through these
as
emotes.
you buy emotes, that's how you get to talk to NPCs. Like I loved that part of Outer Wilds where you had to use the stones to talk to the Nomai that you found.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I'd almost love to see the emotes directly affect the story and how you interact with NPCs in a game like this. Now I'm
Mm.
regretting saying that because I want to put that in a game I might make one day, but I think it'd be cool to just actually make something like emotes your language that you have to use in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that would be interesting. Yeah, I do wish the emotes had a bit more impact. I mean, so actually something that Alex V has mentioned in chat is the the statues when you get an emote says when facing down shadows of this land, try emoting at them or something like that. Did you ever actually try emoting against an enemy? Because I never did it. I'm assuming it doesn't do anything,
Yeah,
but maybe it
I
does.
levitated over a couple of enemies that were coming at me, but that was mostly on accident.
But
Um,
did it help you avoid their attacks?
yeah.
Oh, cool.
One of the slug things went under me while I was levitating, but
That's fun.
then it sat there and I landed on it and it hit me. Um, but yeah, no, you're right. That was something I never really experimented with, and I probably should have. I'd forgotten that
Yeah,
you said that.
maybe that would be really cool. If that's in the game, very cool. If
Yeah.
not, I wish it was in the game because it would be very cool.
It sounds like the sort of
Uh,
thing. You know how in a lot of the Zelda games you can use the fishing rod to distract Ganon in the final battle? It's
mm,
like a recurring Easter egg that they put in, or you can use empty bottles and stuff against the final boss. Like
mm.
if they've used it like that, where like just against certain enemies there'll be some weird emote that just completely throws them off their wheel. That would be very fun.
Yeah. Then seed that in some dialogue, and you've got some very cool Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Um, I, having said that, the emotes and also the robe color changes that you can get, I do like them. But thinking on it on reflection, I think my enjoyment of this game might have been more if they weren't there and some of the problems that we've talked about that are fixable were fixed. So I don't know.
I don't. One of the highlights for me was getting a bright new garb, just because I thought it improved the
Yeah.
character design. But that might just be more of a statement on my preference about the default character design. I don't know.
Mm.
I really liked being this bright blue blob.
Well, it made you stand out because so much of the world is darker tones
Yeah,
that having
exactly.
a yellow robe or whatever, you're like, oh shit, I look awesome in this environment.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
well, I think that's all we have to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah, that was Blue Fire. Like, this feels like one of those clubs where I really enjoyed a game, so all I could do was focus on the little bits that didn't work and how I'd improve it. But
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
I at least enjoyed this game a lot more than I actually expect. Like, I got really worried about a week in when some people were having crashes and there were like problems.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really glad that I still got to play it.
Yeah. I enjoyed a lot about this game. I had a fair amount of gripes with it, but and I guess it's more frustrating again that these are. I think we've touched on this in previous clubs, but gripes that feel so fixable, but just hamper my enjoyment of this game to a large extent.
I think maybe the difference between this one and most of my gripes with previous games that we played is these ones feel like small things that should be fixed because they're just little problems, not decisions. Like often with something like Dark Souls, it's like you have chosen to do this and I disagree with you on it, and that's what's
Yeah,
frustrating me. Whereas this one, it kind of feels like it's all those little things like the UI stuff or the bars for the things in the void where it's like, please just change the color. Like it's
yeah,
that's not a decision. That's just a little thing that slipped through the cracks for a smaller team than the sorts of games we usually cover.
yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting. Maybe it's around this idea of like, and I guess while we're kind of wrapping up our conversation here, people can feel free to post questions in
Yeah.
chat, and we'll get to them in a bit. But the vibe of like, I can play a game for a surprisingly long time, even if I'm not enjoying it, if I have faith that the developer is trying to do something interesting with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, trust in a developer to me is one of the major things that will keep me going in a game, even if I'm not enjoying it that much, because I want to see what is this game trying to do? Like, what am I trying to get from it? And so something that hampers my ability to want to keep playing a game a lot is losing faith in a developer. And each of these small things is just like a little blow to that for me in a sense that I don't know, like small things will sometimes stop me from playing a game more than big things that I dislike.
I do see what you're saying there, and I agree. I think for me, my blinders were on a bit in that regard for this one because this one was specifically playing into gameplay and genres that I love. Like the fact that
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
leading into 3D platformers for me, it's kind of like that for me is already okay. You're doing something I'm interested in, and like I'm going to forgive the small things because I have you've won my faith as a developer by deciding to make a 3D platformer, basically. Um,
yeah. Fair enough.
uh, so we have a question from John here, who says that they have heard that I earlier said that Blue Fire is objectively and unequivocally a better game than
You
Hades.
did say that.
That's not what I said, but they want to hear what that's about.
You said it. I heard it with my own ears
No,
earlier.
you didn't. For the 100th time, I've been very careful. What I said was that I found Blue Fire to be a more enjoyable game than Hades.
Mm,
Um, my reasoning for that is just it's a style of gameplay, it's a genre that I just prefer. Like this is very much a personal taste thing. I think I would have to agree that Hades is kind of objectively a better crafted game.
mm,
But the analogy that I've sort of come to is that like Hades, if somebody gives me a carrot cake and they're like, "This is the best carrot cake in the world," I can eat it and be like, "Yes, I understand. This is the greatest carrot cake anyone has ever cooked." I just personally, I'm not a huge fan of carrot cakes. Whereas, like, even if Blue Fire is a fucking store bought, like, Woolworths brand chocolate cake, I fucking love chocolate cake and I'm going to enjoy the shit out of it, even if it's just, like, not the greatest chocolate cake
even if
ever
it's
made.
yeah, totally.
That's sort of where I landed is like, I had more fun playing Blue Fire than Hades just because I prefer chocolate cake to carrot cake sort of deal.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I think,
You know.
I'm probably in the minority there. I understand that. Maybe I should flip those two around in the analogy.
Mm,
But yeah.
sounds fair to me. You know, it's taste, whatever.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear from other people who played because I know we definitely had like a few. Obviously, this isn't as big a club as we get for some of the bigger games, just judging by the
Mm,
number of people watching. But um, I'm interested to hear from those of you who did finish it, how it added, like how it felt to you guys, basically.
yeah,
Because yeah,
good thought.
like
I'm
I don't know how biased I am.
Yeah, I think this is a smaller club in part because a number of the people who played this game at the start definitely definitely uh, had crashes and
Yeah.
mentioned they were having bad experiences with the game from that perspective.
Well,
I think
and that sort of
yeah,
thing like snowballs as well. Like sort of two people having that problem tells like another five people not to even try. Like
exactly.
it,
I think there are a few people who didn't try or had really low expectations because of that.
yeah, and like I think I touched on this earlier in the club. My regret with bringing Blue Fire to the club is that I did it the month it came out, not 6 months down the line. Like, I think
Yeah.
if we were playing this at the end of the year, hopefully it would be a much more solid game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it is still getting patches and stuff. So that's probably I still really enjoyed this game, but in retrospect, I wish I'd let it sit more before bringing it to the club.
Mm.
I think John McRae is maybe taking issue with. Is that an issue with the analogy specifically?
Hard to tell. Huh? Yeah. I know Scott played this game and really, really liked it. I think had a similar experience to you of being like, oh, I don't think I'm going to enjoy this game. It seems like people are having problems with it, etc.
I think, like, having had brief chats with Scott, I think a lot of his pros and cons are quite similar to most of ours. And that it's like there's this good core game, but like I think he did mention a few things like the level design and stuff like not being as great as he hoped it would be. Which, yeah. Yeah, I think in general the vibe I'm getting from the chat here is that like a lot of people enjoyed it. Like I thought about it more than they expected. It's just I think that initial the fact that those crashes weren't patched by the time we started, unfortunately pushed so many people away, which I feel bad about.
Yeah. I mean, this game is so new that I'm sure there's probably going to be some. It came out on Valentine's Day this year, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be some of these usability fixes that will get fixed. Like, yeah, I think if they do end up making a DLC for it, I think it'll really smooth out some of this stuff.
Yeah, I'll be there, so I'll be able to report on how it is.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, without further ado, we'll get into what we're doing in next month. Oh, sorry. No, we're suddenly getting more questions. That was terrible timing.
Take it back. Take it back.
I'm going back.
Take us back in time.
So John McRae asks, how does playing this game inform how you'll approach other Game Club games in the future, either selecting or analyzing? I've definitely, because this was my first time just being the person to bring all the candidates for the vote. As I've said, I regret how new it was. I think Bluefire was actually a very last minute addition. I was originally just going to bring 4 candidates, and then I was like, I'll chuck this one in, because I'd been following the announcements for a while. So I think I've learned not to do that quite as readily. Like, I should know more about how stable a game is before adding it to the vote, because it was like the day after it came out that I decided to add it to the ballot. And in retrospect, that was too soon. I think in terms of analyzing games, it was nice though to play a game that was less of like a monolith. I feel like so many of the games we play are like the best of the best, and it was nice to dip into just like a game that is normal, I suppose, like relative to a lot of the others. Like when, the 3 roguelikes I've played have all been for the Game Club, and it's sort of 3 of the biggest and best roguelikes in history. I probably don't have the fairest impression of what roguelikes are like.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Yeah, I do, and definitely I think one of the reasons that I like doing the Game Club is we get to play some of these different types of games, right? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, that's going to be a big thing for me next month. Is we're about to play a game that is the sort I would never touch. But based on what I've heard, I think I might actually like it. So I'm quite excited to head into next month's with that in mind in particular. Because next month we're doing Disco Elysium. Because the final cut just came out everywhere but Australia.
We're not allowed. It's too scary.
No, luckily Steam and Epic don't actually have to listen to the ratings for some reason. It's a weird thing. But anyway.
I think it's the kind of system where it's gotten to be this over time, and no one really wants to change it. So let's just leave it. Like nobody wants the press of saying we're going to allow these games in. Nobody wants the press of saying we're going to stop allowing these games in. So let's just leave this weird janky system as it is.
Yeah, exactly. It works more or less. Yeah, this is going to be a very text heavy RPG based sort of game, which are not the ones I
Yeah,
usually
you
dabble
love
in.
reading text, don't you?
Oh yeah. No, I mean if it's the game, I'm more okay with it. Like what drove me nuts in Dark Souls was that reading text felt like I was no longer playing the game.
Mm,
In this
mm,
one, it seems like reading text is playing the game.
mm.
So I feel like that's going to be the difference that lets me get through it this time.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts coming into this one?
I have no idea what this game is, so I'm excited to get into it. I finally watched the trailer for this game last night, and I still am very confused. I think I had thought this game was a roguelike, and that's what's been throwing me off. But we'll get into it. I'm sure it'll be fun.
Yeah, I watched a bit of Alexandra play it like a year ago. So I sort of have a rough idea based on that.
Mm,
But yeah, I think I'm going to role play as one of the Kenneteers, which should be fun because you're a detective.
yeah, cool. Sounds fun. I look forward to finding out about the results to that. Next month, 1st of May next month.
Yeah. So we got. I think it's 5 week or 4 weeks. So yeah, we'll both get started on streaming this one as soon as
Yeah,
possible.
if you want to, be completely up to date with streams as they happen, or our streams or the community streams, and just kind of chat about the game throughout the month, the place to do that is on the Doof Media Discord at doofmedia.com/discord. Yeah, take us back to that slide, Elliot. There we
Yeah.
go.
Um.
Uh,
Yeah, that's the place to go. Like Ruben and I will be streaming on Twitch, but you get notifications about it there. But also, like so many other people in the club are going to be streaming it this month. You can watch other people play. People will watch you play. It's really fun to get involved that way.
yeah, I mean, this is a fairly, from what I understand, it seems to be a game where the choices that you make throughout the game impact stuff that happens around you, right? So it'll be interesting to see some other people play through the game and see the different experiences that people are having.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
might be totally wrong. That seems like what it is based on the impression of the game I've gotten, but God knows.
I think that's true. Yes. But yeah,
Cool.
cool. So yeah. Until then, everyone, we'll see you on Twitch and on the Discord. See you on the 1st of May.
Bye.